Alan, for those wonderfully kind and mostly true words. Fellow Toastmasters, very welcome guests, welcome to Maiden Speakers. Thank you for coming tonight. It's lovely to see you all here. I am going to talk about speeches. So let's start with this. I don't like writing speeches. I don't like writing speeches. It's a lot of work. Frankly, I'd rather be doing just about anything else. There is an adage. If you want to find the most efficient way to do something, give it to the laziest person. Tonight, I am here to give you the lazy man's guide to creating speeches. How's that sound? Right, your answer is irrelevant. I'm doing it anyway, but just, prepared. I joined Toastmasters in 2007. That's a long time ago. I was shy, nervous, socially anxious. I struggled to present in public. I struggled to give speeches, to be seen standing on a stage in front of people. I have overcome many, maybe not quite all of those things, but most of them, and I have given a lot of speeches in those years. I have created them in all sorts of different ways. And what I want to share is what I think is the best way, what's worked for me, and hopefully it's something you can use. This is a method that I use to create Toastmaster speeches, to create work speeches, to outline reports, basically to create kind of anything. So it is not just for doing Toastmasters contest speeches, but it's also for doing Toastmasters contest speeches. This is how I've created pretty much everything in the last decade. I've refined it a little bit over the years. Hopefully you'll find it useful. When I started, I still remember writing my icebreaker, my very first prepared speech. Toastmasters, it's in a notebook somewhere. I have dozens of notebooks from Toastmasters. They're all in cupboards, drawers, in-house. Some of them full of useful information, some of them not. But I have my icebreaker there somewhere, and it is written out page after page of longhand, all about me. And I did my first few speeches that way. I sat down with a blank piece of paper, half an idea, and I wrote. And that is an excellent technique as a sort of psychological stream of consciousness writing exercise. It's a god-awful way to create a speech. Don't do it. Do not write your speeches longhand. I'm going to stress that from the start. If you do that, you will end up finishing in a very different place to where you started, because writing's a slow process, especially handwriting, and depending how fast you type, how fast you handwrite. In all that time, you will start somewhere and you will end somewhere very, very different. I say it's a fun, creative writing exercise. But to get a speech down, I don't recommend it. What I do recommend is a magnificent piece of technology that is nothing to do with me, that I stumbled on, I learned about through Toastmasters many years ago. And it is the magic of mind maps. Who knows about mind maps? Who uses mind maps? Brilliant. I'm preaching to half the choir. Mind maps were developed by a man named Tony Buzan, a lovely Englishman. He was in circa 2016-ish named Toastmasters Golden Gavel recipient. That's an award Toastmasters International gives out to an internationally significant communicator. So it was a recognition. I had a memory of having a very brief conversation. I met him in Washington when he was given that award. Lovely man, sadly passed away a few years ago, but his legacy stays with us. If you go onto YouTube, type in mind maps, Tony Buzan, you will learn pretty much everything that I know about mind maps. It is a way to get information out in a visual way that is useful and creative and memorable. I'm an engineer. My work notes are full of bullet-pointed lists. That's how I take notes at meetings. That's how I record things. If I want to create something, I create a mind map. A mind map, for those who don't know, is a simple thing. Draw a circle in the middle of the page. Put something in there, a prompt, a word, a theme, draw some lines coming off it, and then put ideas at the end of those lines. So there is a theoretical mind map I have created just for this event. An idea, a thought, another idea. This is how I start everything. This is a brain dump. It's not a first draft, it's a brain dump. I'm going to talk about something, and a little bit later on I'll talk about topics, how to pick, because a few people have asked, how do you choose what to talk about? I'll come on to that later. But you're going to talk about something. Create a mind map, a brainstorm, and get down everything you can on the page, everything you can possibly think of about that topic. Do not filter. There's no filtering here. It's just throw it all on the page. We'll filter it later. Make sense? That is the first bit of the speech I took to Malaysia in 2014. So that was my district winning speech. That's the mind map it started with. I used some of that, not all of it. That's kind of the point. But that's the origins of a speech. That's the first step. And I cannot stress enough how much I recommend using this. And seriously, spend about 15 minutes on YouTube. You will learn everything you ever needed to know about mind maps. And then buy yourself a multicoloured pen, because colour is really good as well. You become a complete pen nerd like me. There's a speech, one I did at Maidenhead years ago. I've been going through some old notebooks and I found that one. There you go. There's a nice colourful mind map. That's more like an end product, or it's a mid product, I think. So, something colourful, memorable, visual. Got the feel for that? Good. You're going to write a speech tonight? That's what you're here for, isn't it? I'm going to show you how easy it is. So, right now, right this very minute, I'll give you a couple of minutes, create a mind map. Anyone who doesn't have a piece of paper, I've got blank paper, anyone needs? Pick a topic. If there's something you think you might ever want to talk about, doesn't need to be anything significant. This is just to create a theoretical speech that you might never give. If you've got something you consider, draw that. There's 4 suggestions I've got. We're just going to create something. Awesome. Give you a couple of minutes. Draw a circle in the middle of the paper. Write 1 or 2 words in the circle, no more. Your idea. Or your launching off point. Draw a line coming out from it. This one nice. Draw another line. Think, any idea that pops into your head, do not filter, just literally anything you think of, just smash it on a piece of paper. Draw a line, put it down there. Draw a line coming off that, something that flows off that. Maybe you thought of a quote, an anecdote, something you did at work, something a friend told you, some beautiful little fact, piece of trivia that you stumbled across years ago, maybe yesterday. Is that it? Thank you. Hang on. Don't worry about being neat. You need to be neat. Use the space. So the mind mapping part of the speech, carry on. This can take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it could take days, sometimes it takes weeks. This is where you put like everything. Okay, I need to research this, I need to Google this, I need to go and find a quote, I need to check out a book. Anything there goes on the map. Just dump it down there, right? Here's the thing I have to do. Sometimes knock up a speech in half an hour. This literally is a 5-minute exercise. Or 10 minutes, because it's all just coming out of your head. Sometimes it's, oh, I'll go away and expand this, or expand this branch of the map. And I'll come back and refine. So it is something you keep coming back to, but we're looking at it here as a launching off point. Great concentration in this room, I love it. So this is the brainstorming part of the exercise. The next thing is, you don't have a speech yet, you don't have a draft yet. We need to cull. What you have are a whole bunch of ideas on a page, and this is great. So, example. Don't bother trying to read all this, but visually, this is tonight's workshop. So this is step 1.5, maybe 2, step 3, whatever. Now, I did it in black and white because I'm using this beautiful little device, which I love. It's a lovely ink tablet. The one thing I miss is colour. Colour is great in mind maps, but so be it. I dumped everything down there and thought, what do I really want to talk about tonight? What's important? What you're looking for is, somewhere on your page are some things you could put together to make a cohesive speech. What are those things? So, I did that. It does colour, you just don't get to see it on the screen. It's still cool though. So what I'm looking for, if I'm creating a speech, a presentation, whatever, is, okay, which things go together? There's a message I'm trying to get across here. Which of elements on that page reinforce that message? Some of them will, some of them won't. Which ones can coexist together? So take a look at your list now. Pick 3. 3 is always a good number. We're Toastmasters. Rule of 3, which isn't a rule, it's a guideline, but it's a good guideline. Pick 3 things on your page that could go into a speech that somehow could sort of relate to each other or bounce off each other, and get rid of the rest. Ideally, do colour, little red asterisk, maybe some numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, in this order. You can come and change that later, that's fine. Highlighter, circle, whatever. Just something that works for you. Because once you've done that, what you then have is the outline of a speech. Something that could become a speech in the very near future. If at any point you have questions, holler out. So stop me if you want to go deeper into something, if you don't understand something, just ask. Just ask.
Chris, what did you use colour for to group ideas together?
Because it makes it more visually interesting. It's one of the things they talk about in mind maps. It's trying to make that imprint on your brain that it's a good visual. That, for example. So if that was all monochrome, it's harder to read, etc. It makes it easier to read. It's a useful way. Time to kill your darlings. Love that expression. It's a writing expression. That's, oh, I want this bit in. I love this character. This bit's really good. But if it doesn't fit the speech, it's got to go. So we need to be a little bit ruthless. And when you come to the editing portion, you've got to be really ruthless. Cull it down. What's next? Yeah. I would now like to introduce you to the one innovation I have brought to making speeches, as far as I know. Everything else, I'm going to talk about tonight is entirely unoriginal. I just magpied it from everywhere. So here is my contribution to speech writing and speech creation. Are you impressed?
Yeah.
Should be. Yes. I call it the speech snake. I might be taking some liberties there with the TM. I don't even know if I invented this. I'm sure someone else has done entirely the same thing. But somewhere I started doing this. What I was looking for was a way, I've got some ideas, I've got some bits that might go in a speech. How can I represent the flow of a speech? There's some questions about structure. People always ask about structures. What's a good structure for a speech? I'm a big fan of structure in speech when you're doing impromptu, when you're doing evaluations, when you're doing table topics. Because it gives you something to hang your ideas on, and you can do that in a hurry, and it just lets it. The better a speech is, the more prepared a speech is, the less you will ever see the structure. It will have a structure, it'll be right there, but your structure becomes a flow. And the more refined your speech is, the more it flows. So your structure is, you're moving smoothly from one idea to the next, your ideas make sense, it's chronological, it's building up of ideas, building up of risk, whatever it is, it makes sense. But I'm looking for a flow, so how can I make it flow? So I started scribbling like this. I found this again in an old notebook. No idea if this was the first one, the 15th one. This was a speech I gave in either 2010 or 2012, because I gave this speech twice. And I just went, let's see if I can just see how this speech flows from start to finish. I wrote down, like, okay, we start at the top and then we just follow the line. It was also on quite a small notebook, so that was the other reason. This is a speech I gave at this pub towards the end of last year-ish, sometime last year. I got amazing. That's how it started. Mind map, done quite quickly. That is what I had sitting on the lectern when I stood here and delivered the speech. You will be disturbed at how little the time between the creation of that, and the delivery was. That's just generally my speaking style because, as established, quite lazy. So this is a way you can knock up a speech pretty quickly. Get the flow of it. The other advantage, memory. Memory is a visual way to remember, more so than writing scripts, more so than bullet points. I learned to speak off bullet points. I got told that years ago in high school. And that's a good technique to use. So rather than writing a speech out longhand, bullet, 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 and we'll just talk off these bullets and link them together. This is basically just the same thing, except I've put the bullets on a curve. So this works. So I know when I wrote this, because I wrote this with my hand, there's something about writing with your hand just makes it stick in there. Okay, once I get to that corner, I'm on talking about the late start. Yeah, we were 6 weeks late starting. Okay, that's on that corner, and I can see the bit under it, and on the corner below that, it's all about teamwork and collaboration. That's what we had to do, blah, blah, blah. And it gives that, okay, I'm on that corner now, I'm halfway down there. And it helps when you're here delivering it, you barely even need to look at it, in theory. So it can act as an aid memoir. Again, Tracy.
It's not turning a corner in the story.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. If you can link that up, that's great. But don't try and squeeze your story to fit the snake. It's just a convenience tool. But I've just found it really works for me. Yes.
So, question: what happens when you become too wedded to a particular way? When you refine speech and you've thought about this perfect structure and the mix of long sentences and short ones. Once you kind of summarize it in that flow.
Yep.
How do you not get hung up on, oh, but I forgot the perfect word, or I missed this thing, or this was like one of the things I really wanted to say?
Yeah, completely with you on that. We have not got anywhere near that point yet. This is still a quick and dirty speech. So we're way away from the refined, choosing precise words, choosing precision stage of it. And I'll come on to that. So sort of hold that question. I think I will start to answer your question because you'd emailed me with a similar question. I will kind of answer that question as we go, but if you feel I haven't in about 15 minutes, ask it again. But we are still very much, this is a quick and dirty speech. We still don't have a first draft though. What we have is some ideas on a page arranged in a way you can stand up and talk about them. The next step is to stand up and talk about them. It is not to pick up a pen, which I can't do because I gave it to Zahid. You've done my visual aid, I need that back, I love that pen. It is not time to write your speech yet. Because if you want a speech that sounds good, that flows, that sounds like a speech, it needs to be not written, it needs to be spoken. And this is so fundamentally important. After many years in Toastmasters, I can tell when someone has written their speech. Most of you who've been here a little while probably can too, because the written word is different to the spoken word. And you see, sometimes listen to someone give a speech and it sounds like they're reading an essay. It sounds like they're reading a script. And look, you can give a very good speech that way. You will struggle to connect with your audience. You will struggle to really affect them on an emotional level. And you will really struggle to remember it because the hardest thing is to be given a script and memorize a 7-minute script. And that's kind of what you're doing. I mean, you created it, hopefully that's easier, but it puts you under so much pressure. Mind map, speech snake, first draft is verbal. Give your speech. Give it in the car, give it in the living room, give it at your club. But talk it out. Talk through the speech and record what you say. And that way you will have a speech that sounds like a speech because it came out of your mouth, you used your words, it used spoken word. And that is how you create a speech which is in a conversational style, which is a connected style, and which is authentically you, not a written version of you. You then have an audio recording. We live in 2024. Oh, there's so many things you can do with that. Shove it into some AI online and get a transcription. Otter has been around for years. Otter.ai. Just keep creating a new account, a new email. You can get their freebies. You get about 3 a year.
So, what is the website name?
Otter, O-T-T-E-R, the little animals with the Otter.ai is the site. Yeah, there are now so many speech-to-text utilities, especially with ChatGPT, Gen AI coming on. You probably don't have to look that hard anymore.
Either Google Docs.
Yeah, Google Docs does it. Awesome, awesome. Yeah. So you guys are way ahead of me. Then, congratulations, you have the first draft of your speech. Well done. That didn't take long, did it? That's it. You've then got something you can work on to your heart's content. This is how I've created the first draft of every contest speech I've done for probably the last decade. Well, in fairness, a lot of them I've just stuck 2 headphones in, sat down in front of the keyboard and transcribed, pause and transcribe. It's worth the effort.
Why do we transcribe it?
Yep. Because we're going to move on and turn it into something good. We still have a quick and dirty speech, and your first draft is the first draft. And as Hemingway probably didn't say, the first draft of everything is shit. But it'll be pretty good because you've used all these techniques. Whenever people sometimes come to me, they've got a contest speech, oh, can you give me feedback on my speech? And I'll say, do you have a script? And they say no, and I say, seriously? Because the written word is really easy to edit. Editing something audio is really hard. If you're going to give that to someone else or yourself, you can sit down and edit that. That goes there. I can draw all over the page. I want something written and visual, and I can edit the living daylights out of that. And that's how we turn a quick and dirty speech into a really good one. And that's why. So that.
Another question.
Yes.
Your first draft,
Yep.
is it the same length as your final speech, or do you kind of speak for 10 minutes rather than 6? You've got more waffle to cut out.
It's as long as it turns out to be. It's a first draft. After you've done this for a while, you get a bit of a feeling. I can throw something together really quickly and it will come out about 7 minutes just because I get a feel for what that is. I kind of know because I've done so many 7-minute speeches at Toastmasters. You may or may not get it right the first time. Your first draft might be 5 minutes long, in which case you're in a good place. Your first draft might be 10 minutes long, in which case go back to your mind map and do a lot more culling. Much better under than over. Yeah.
Yeah, I sometimes tend to do it in chunks, say it out loud, because the open and the close are the first thing to learn, but the middle bits, I like to separate them from the opening and closing, and perhaps either separately, but yeah, and I don't do enough of recording it to be able to thrive in.
Yeah, totally. And I think, yeah, introductions and closings are almost treated completely separately. They kind of, I tend to add them on at the end sometimes. A little bit of depends on what idea is in your head at the time, but this is really about getting the core of the speech. We have mind map, we have speech snake. In fact, there you go. That was the next exercise. Draw a snake on your page. There it is. Draw that on your page. Those 3, 4, however many ideas off your mind map, drop them in your speech snake. And just think about, how is this going to flow? Give me a minute. Neil Diamond song stuck in their head. Just did a whole weekend of him on the BBC. Love Neil. Yeah.
So when you say come to the club, so don't put it pen to paper just yet, come to the club with a very rough thing in your head.
I didn't quite say that. I may have implied that. I often do that, but it's a bad habit. Ideally, you want to do this before you give the speech. Okay? Before you give the speech in anger, give it, on your own, to the dog, to the canary, not into the mirror. Doing it in the mirror is weird. You end up worrying too much about yourself. This is before you've given the speech in anger, talk it out and get the words. This is more of a do as I say, not as I do type situation. So that there is how I've created the first draft of pretty much everything for a long time. That technique really works for me, that method. It's simple, you can do it in a really short amount of time, or you can take your time with it. You'll end up going, if you're refining the speech into something refined and elegant, you'll go back and forth on many of those steps. Might do multiple mind maps, you'll definitely do multiple speech snakes. But I think
Structured like the key labels, or some, I don't know, when you're stuck for ideas, something like what is the key message, or what is a historical other story.
oh, Cora, that is just the best segue I've ever heard.
Oh,
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I'm going to segue myself now. And And the question is this: what goes in the circle? Or the question I've had from a couple of people, which is simply this: what do I talk about? Ben said, what makes a good speech? Do you consider the audience when you're creating a speech? What do people want to hear? Yeah, excellent questions, big ones. What is the first rule of public speaking? Right.
Know your audience.
Start with the audience in mind.
Yes, yes, yes. Perfect. Know your audience. I know if it is or not, but that was what I was taught years and years ago. So yes, you do need to consider your audience. To a point. Many years ago, by sheer coincidence, I was asked to give 2 workshops in the same week on public speaking and presentations. One was at my job, and the other one was the University of Bristol was starting a Toastmasters club. And one of them got in touch and said, Chris, come and do a thing for us. And my work, I thought I'd do an introduction to presentation skills. So I think that's what they're brilliant. I can write one presentation, use it twice in a week, win-win. What a pain. I had a good long think about the audience. I actually followed the advice I was given. Bunch of professional, mostly technical people, midst of their careers, bunch of university students with a moderate to marginal interest in public speaking. What do they have in common?
Nothing.
Yeah, not very much, yeah. Not very much. I had to write 2 speeches, 2 presentations, and they had very little in common. Super annoying, but yeah, you've got to think about your audience. Is what you're going to talk about of interest to your audience? Is it relevant to them? Will they care? Can you make them care? Is probably the better question. So yes, you need to think about your audience. A Toastmasters audience is very general. People from all walks of life, backgrounds, ages. Can be a plus and a minus. You know, if you're talking to your school, that's different. To work, that's different. So yeah, you do need to think about that. What makes a good speech? What topic makes a good speech? Anything. A relational. The 2013 Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speaking was a man named Pressian, unpronounceable surname. His speech, there you go, Tony knows it, his speech was about changing a tyre on a car. You might know that one, yeah. Broke down or he burst the tyre, changed the tyre, and literally his entire speech from start to finish was his experience at a service station at night getting a tyre changed. That's not a good topic for a speech. That's a ridiculous topic for a speech. But he made it work. He made it meaningful for the audience. I wrote a speech a few years ago, the year after I won the UK and Ireland final. I wrote a speech about climbing a hill in the Lake District and making a terrible error of judgment and almost dying on that hill. That was an awful speech. It was absolutely terrible. It was the most contrived, ridiculous thing I'd ever done, and I regret it still. I cringe when I think about it because it had no actual meaning to me. It was just, I thought, oh, that's a dramatic, terrible event. It must be good speech material. There's a cliche in Toastmasters, and I've heard people, I had this conversation with people after a conference probably 10 years ago, and we were joking and went, we know how to do the international speech contest now. Find the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life and then write a speech about it. Don't do that. Please don't do that. The misery and awful speeches really were a phase for a while, and I keep waiting for that phase to completely die. It never will. But don't just write about something you think is good speech material. So, what do we write about? How about something that is interesting? Should we write about something that is interesting? We absolutely should not write about something that is interesting. I hate interesting. Awful. I went to a course about the same year I joined Toastmasters, I think. It was a week-long live-in course, and it was a deep and meaningful thing. And the guy running it on day one said, at the end of this week, I'm going to ask you how this course was. And if any of you say it was interesting, I will know that I've failed. because interesting only acts on mind. Interesting is not a bad thing, but all it is a foot in the door. Oh, that's interesting, I'll keep listening. But if it never goes beyond interesting, there's no sale there. If you want to make a speech that matters, I embedded a little clue in the title of this workshop. You need to talk about something that matters to you. That's what you should talk about. The key of a great speech and a great speaker is to take something that matters to you, no matter what it is, and make it matter to your audience. That is the skill of writing a really good speech. Do you think that the vast majority of people in 1960s United States gave a damn about civil rights and the plight of black Americans? I don't. I'm sure a lot of them did, but a portion of them did. And yet Martin Luther King made what's considered by many the greatest speech of the 20th century about exactly that thing. He took something that mattered deeply and passionately to him, and he connected with so many people and made it matter to everybody else, even people entirely unaffected by it. That's a brilliant speech. Yeah?
Would this not be the first step before you do one man?
Yes. Yes, it would be. Sometimes. Sometimes all you've got is the nub of an idea. And sometimes you can get stuck. So you can get stuck thinking, oh, this has got to be the most amazing thing ever. This has got to be the most meaningful speech I've ever given in my life. And you end up sitting looking at a blank piece of paper for 3 weeks and you've got nothing. Don't get hung up on this right at the start. Sometimes some of my speeches, the real message, the real core of it hasn't come out until partway through the process. If you can get that at the start, yes, this is something I'm going to talk about that matters to me. 100% start there. Totally. Yes. Sometimes it will emerge. Talk a little bit about that. Talk about things that are affecting or important. Things that change your life. Things that you want to see, a change you want to make in the world. The advice from, I've seen lots of workshops by Toastmasters world champions, and I think it was Jim Key from years ago said, here's the key, life happens, pay attention. Stupid little incidents like changing a tyre on a car. These are speech material. Write them down. Who has a story file? Who has a story file? Everybody put your hands up. God damn you. So many years, huh? Keep the stories file of speech ideas. So I used to do it in the back of one of these notebooks. In fact, I think that one even has some in the back. These days, phone, documents app, whatever, notebook app. Interesting anecdote, put it in the file. Oh, maybe I should do a speech about that one day. Put it in the file. Don't edit, just write it down. Interesting newspaper article. I remember, again, one of the Toastmasters World Championships that came to our district conference. The UK was carrying around a bunch of newspaper articles that he said, yeah, I found this is really cool, I might do a speech about this one day. This is a great thing to throw in. Bits clipped out of magazines. Snap it, stick it in Evernote. Does anyone use Evernote still? I don't know, it never worked for me, but yeah. There are so many great tools. Just somewhere you can go, and then just look at that. You probably never use 80% of them, but the other 20%, and you're thinking, what am I going to talk about? It's there. You've done it. You've done the hard work. Oh wait, no you haven't. When I went to the district final, which is at the time was the UK and Ireland, before we split the district, I created a speech. I won the club contest in the area. I did a lot of work before the division contest. By the time I got to the district final, I had my script. I'm bouncing it back and forth with Mel from formerly this club. I've got 37 drafts of that saved They're just the ones I've bothered to save as discrete drafts. I've got a stack about that thick of printouts, scribbled all over, and notes. I don't really know how many official drafts there were, but everyone who's taken a speech that far and won with it can recount that. If you're signed up for the conference in a couple of weeks, on Sunday there was an interview with Mark Hunter, another Toastmasters World Champ, talking about the same thing. So he won the whole shebang, world champion, and he talked about doing hundreds of drafts of his speech. And this is where it comes down to, how much does it matter? If it matters, do the work. You've got a speech, you've taken something rough, a palette full of ideas, siphoned them down, talked it out, got your first draft. Edit. Edit your first draft. Give the speech again, it'll change a lot. Edit again, record it again, transcribe it again. Keep editing, edit, 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 edit. If the speech really matters, it matters enough to put the work in. And I remember seeing, first conference I ever went to, the guy who won the international speech contest, I was just blown away. Brilliant speech. He said, I gave this speech hundreds of times. I'd give it every day when I was walking my dog. I would give the speech to the dog. And it's like, oh, okay, right. So this is what people do.
Did the dog run away?
You keep that on the lead. You keep a good grip on the lead. My dog's had a few speeches, but my policy, and I actually came up with this for doing evaluations, but it applies even more so to refining a speech. Rewrite, refine, rehearse, repeat.
What point do you throw a speech away and say this is just not working?
Good question. When you throw in the towel on speech, I don't think I can answer that. When it's become crystal clear that it's just not working, and there's no more life you can wring out of it.
Do you have to throw away speeches, or?
Oh yeah. Oh my God, yes. Unfortunately, I'm not the person to ask because I threw them away way too late. I've taken some speeches much further than I ever should have. There's a point where you need feedback. You can only take this so far on your own. You need feedback from other people. If you're taking a speech, for further levels of a contest, you need to listen to feedback on the way through. If you're doing a really important speech at work or a wedding or whatever, come to your Toastmasters club, give the speech, listen to feedback carefully. Don't take on board everything. At some point, you might just think, I suppose it's when it's not saying what you want it to say, it's not doing what you want it to do, and when people are saying, I don't really get it. And that's what you're looking for. Cora, you asked about how do you make a speech stand out? How do you make it unique? You kind of follow this. If you're talking about something that really matters to you passionately, that's what stands out. If you care about it, you care about it more than anyone else. And you're bringing a new perspective on it. You bring yourself into the speech. That's why we're talking it, we're not writing it. You're bringing your own unique perspective. You're putting as much of you into it as you can. That's how you stand out. There is a danger when you edit the living daylights out of something that you over-edit. I don't believe you can be over-rehearsed. You can be bored with your speech, and that's a sign you've probably done enough practice. That's fine. One thing I learned the very hard way, is you started with a message. You need a message. You have at some point you need a core message. There is a little danger that you edit the message out, because it's at this point during the refinement you're then getting into the nice wordplay, and I'm going to make this sound really nice, I'm going to use these nice words. And you'll get lots of feedback from people saying you should add this, you should say this, you should say this, maybe don't say that. And you keep adding things in, taking things out. Whatever you add anything or take it out, just ask yourself, does this reinforce the core message of the speech? If it doesn't, get rid of it. If it's already there and it doesn't reinforce the core message of the speech, kill your darlings. Even if it's a little bit of the speech you like, hoik it. Because this is, in this refinement, this is where you've got to think about, is my speech bringing across one clear, concise message? And the guideline I've always got is, explain your speech to someone in no more than 2 sentences. What is it? What is the message of your speech? Can you explain it? 2 sentences, maybe 3 if you're getting really complex. If you can do that, and if that comes across in your speech, if someone's seen it, ask them, what do you think the message of this speech was? And they might tell you something quite surprising. Okay, you've got some more refining to do. If you're talking about a contest speech, that core message has to be crystal clear. If you're talking about a speech that changes people's minds, that core message has to be crystal clear. In or out of Toastmasters, doesn't matter. If you want people to do something, you need to be very clear about what you want them to do. Does that make sense? Exactly. Questions? Hey.
What's the difference between rewrite and refine?
I don't know, but it's a really good bit of alliteration.
Okay, fair enough. I was just wondering whether there's like a different part of the process of refinement versus rewriting.
There's an element that rewrite means keep making more drafts of it, really. You got it down? Right, do it again. The refining is just about the little subtle changes. Get it a little bit better. Can you say it with less words? Just a few less words, a little bit more precision. So that's really about how you say it as much as how it's written. And remember, keep talking it through. Don't turn it into a written speech. You started this as something to talk, keep talking it.
Is there a foreplay to this where you don't give it away too quickly? Where in the speech you don't give the elements of the speech just...
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So people have really strong opinions on this, and I've seen, you know, you were a minute into your speech and I still didn't know what it was about, and sometimes they will just tune out. You don't give away everything in your speech, don't give away anything in the title. You need to give enough at the start of your speech to pique the audience's interest, because attention spans are increasingly short. You don't need to give everything away up front, but you need to give enough that I, as an audience member, I'm going to sit here and say, okay, I'll hang on. That's where interesting comes in. Interesting is your little foot in the door, but it needs to get more than that pretty quickly. I like a surprise in a speech. Some people don't. I would like you to look at the speech in front of you now, the one you have written, refined a little bit, and I want you to think about what the message of that speech is. It doesn't need to be anything earth-shattering, anything, you know, you might have written a speech about your holiday, or about whatever. What's a message that could be taken from what you've put there? I'll give you about 30 seconds to think about that. You go ahead.
Sorry, you want to hang on for a second?
No, I don't want to ask.
One thing I was thinking throughout actually your delivery is that very often I think in speech development and delivery is keeping in mind what the purpose of your speech is. And I think you started to allude to it towards the end of your delivery there.
Yeah.
But I think it's a key component. I'm not going into mind maps as well, but I think you've got to set off with, am I looking to entertain people, to influence them, whether it's selling them something, inspiring them. And I think that helps with the framework, because you know what the key elements are. I think that sits between your mind map and your snake, as you call it.
Yeah.
You've got to get that kind
Yeah,
of
absolutely. Keeping the purpose in mind, always. Genre? It is what it is. Think more about purpose and message than genre. Who's got a message? Ben, what do you got?
I need to be dragged to do anything.
Excellent. What's in it for me?
Nothing at the moment.
Right, so that's the thing to work on. Something for you, what can you give it to the audience? Cora, yeah.
Burst your bubble.
Cool. What's it mean?
It means that your social connections don't need to be constrained by the people you know and meet through your daily activities.
Cool, I'm interested. Steve, what do you got?
I'd say just choose your adventure and enjoy the ride.
Nice. Succinct. Brilliant. Anyone else want to give it a crack?
Yeah. Collaboration and hard work gets paid off.
Collaboration and hard work gets paid off. Nice. Good. Succinct, shareable, universal. Think about your message now. How universal is it? Is it something specific to you? A few people you know? How wide an audience would be interested in your message? You've asked about what's the difference between a club speech, a contest speech, whatever. So a good contest speech has a very universal message. You could end up giving this to the entire world. There are Toastmasters clubs in over 100 countries. How universal is your message? Secondly, I think the biggest mistake of my speech, the reason I didn't get past the semi-final, I didn't solve a big enough problem. My problem was still about me. I didn't quite find a way to make it universal enough to be about everybody. I mean, it's never going to be everybody, but most people. If you're thinking, and this is, again, horses for courses, what is the purpose of your speech, what's the audience? If you want to go far in a contest, or talk to a really universal audience, and let's face it, we have incredible reach these days, you need to think your message. Is it universal? How can I take something that's really personal to me and make it somehow connect to everybody? It's a challenge. It's a big challenge because our audiences potentially are getting bigger and bigger. So my speech, the one I said a link to, you may or may not have watched it. I gave that speech at the club. It was done in a bit of a hurry, I've got to say. It was an idea, and it was about money and about my weird emotional hang-ups about money. From growing up working class to being middle class, what does that mean now that money's not an issue in my life anymore? And it was a speech about me. It was very much about me. And I managed to expand it a bit. It wasn't until I had to go and do the division contest that I had a good chat to an old Toastmasters mentor who said, "This speech is about you, I don't see myself in it. How are you going to put me in this speech? How are you going to put someone else in this speech?" So it became not so much a speech about growing up poor and coming to terms with what it means not to be poor anymore. I was making allusions to poverty and poverty of thought, and I realised this is not even my speech now. This is just random ideas that I think sound interesting. What I'm actually talking about is the concept of having enough, and that's universal. It's how much is enough? Is there enough? Or what's that feeling of I don't have enough? That's a universal thing everyone's felt at some point, and it's, again, can we expand it to money? It mightn't be money, and this is, how far can we take this? I feel like there's probably more legs in that speech. Am I beautiful enough? Am I popular enough to do what I need to do? And it became a thing about my weird hang-ups about money, going to, can you ever get to a point where you're satisfied with having enough, or are you going to spend your whole life just wanting more and never being satisfied? And that's taking a very personal message and then making it much more universal. And it takes time. You've got to really think about it and dig in. Sometimes that inspiration is not there at the start. It's just a seed of an idea. I'd say most of my best speeches just started probably with nothing more than the seed of an idea. That's a challenge. I'm not going to talk a massive amount about delivering speeches because I could spend about the next 3 hours talking about speech delivery and tips and tricks which I have learned over the years, again, from watching people who are very good at it. I'm going to say this. There is a nasty habit in Toastmasters of performing, and I have been guilty of this for most of my time at Toastmasters. I love performing. Turns out, who knew? The best speeches are not a performance, they are a conversation with the audience. There is a performative element, but the less you perform and the more you talk to and with your audience, the more you will connect with them, the more your message will get across. There are lots of tricks you can use about fancy staging and gestures and using your voice in different and interesting ways. But if they are not authentically you, if they are not a somewhat natural part of your speech, they come across as being fake and performative. And you can go a very long way in contests doing this, and that's fine. So be it. It's the nature of the game. It is a lot of hard work. It is so stressful doing a performance. I'm not an actor. I have no drama background. I don't want to have to remember a script. And I've seen people give speeches where every single movement has a gesture attached to it. And then I'm going to move here. And then, when I was 21, oh my God, I was in it. And honestly, I've seen speeches at very high levels of contest that look like they're done in interpretive dance. It's tedious. It's such hard work as a speaker. I think of the stress I put myself through trying to do that, and the sheer soul-crushing terror of trying to perform a speech like this, and it's not worth it. It's so much better doing what I do now. Yes, rehearse your speech. Know what you're going to do. Maybe have a few practiced gestures at key points. That's good. Use the stage effectively. There's lots of great tricks for using the stage. But don't make that the entire feature of your speech. The reason I focus on content is because I think content is more important. Have something useful to say and then say it. Refined content is more important than really fancy delivery. Fancy delivery is fun. But don't make it the be-all and end-all. Don't make it the star of your show. If all people remember is your amazing body language, you have failed spectacularly as a speaker. Well done. If anyone ever tries to tell you that 55% of communication is body language, beat them around the head with something, a book, or something harder, because they are so fundamentally and dangerously wrong. That's a thing that people actually say.
And I get violent.
Yeah, feel free to get violent with my blessing. There is another box on that screen.
So, one quick question.
Yeah.
How to remember the keywords, right? If you have like a 10 minutes or 40 minutes presentation or speech, right? You tend to actually, when you get nerves, right? You tend to forget,
Yeah.
right? What is the technique?
I cannot stress this enough. I literally cannot stress this enough. As much as I stress it, it won't be enough. Learn to think on your feet. One of the reasons I've gone through this technique for creating a speech is because it helps you remember it. That the nature of doing this helps you remember the visualization of where you are on the page. Those things help. Memory comes with repetition. I don't have a great memory. You want memory techniques? Turn to your right. At one point, I'm going to learn how Graham does what he does. Do table topics. I'm a natural impromptu speaker. It's my favourite bit of Toastmasters. But the thing I struggled with my entire life is to stand in front of a room full of people and be looked at. I remember when I joined Toastmasters, I would get up, do a table topic, and I'd go, oh my God, oh yeah, woo! And then I'd sit down. Anyone know what I just said? No idea, nothing. I was just blank. I would just be like, whoa, I was autopilot. And when you're up here and you're so panicked and nervous, you really are sometimes on autopilot, and that's when you can't remember your speech, you can't remember your script. That's fine. It comes with exposure to what we do. That is the whole core of Toastmasters. It doesn't really matter which role you do, stand in front of the room and say something, and every time you do that it gets a little bit easier. Do table topics because you stand in front of the room and say something without a script, without preparation, without knowing what you're going to say. And you get used to that, and you do that for long enough, and then you're not panicking. You can think about the question. When I won the district final, there's a video of my area contest, and right at the end of my speech I take a pause for no reason. There's no reason to take a pause at that point in the speech. I took that pause because I forgot what was going to be next. I had no idea. I'd rejigged, I'd completely reordered my speech, and I went, oh. I'm the last minute of my speech, and I've gone, yep, no idea. However, I'd done a lot of table topics, so I didn't panic. I was able to not panic, and I just filled in. I waffled a little bit, and that little part of your brain that knows what's going on, that gets pushed down by all the nerves and anxiety, I just let it do its thing. I waffled for maybe 10 seconds, and then my brain went, oh, it's this bit, and then I finished the speech. That's why you do table topics. So give evaluations as well. Again, short speech. Evaluation is great because you're writing a short script and then you're delivering it on 5 minutes, 10 minutes preparation. Brilliant. That's speech writing. Your evaluation is a speech. It's a short prepared speech. When you're doing an evaluation, rewrite it. I use bullets for evaluation, just bullet point notes. Use whatever you want. Any other questions?
Well, just
Yeah.
one thing you mentioned about delivery, I think absolutely spot on. I still remember a Frick quote, Computer Frick. But what's the point of perfecting a delivery of a poorly worded, badly constructed script? And that's the thing. So many people focus on delivery, and you're right. It should be the content.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, no, I love that. Love that.
Chris,
Tony.
a big topic, the introduction of humour.
Yes.
Features.
We have another hour.
We do, don't we?
No, we don't. The introduction of humour. Humour is a great thing in speech. I'm a big fan of humour. It very much helps the speech, helps you get a difficult message across, you get any message across. There is not an easy way to do it, except when you do it and then you think that was easy. I don't think I've got time to really dig into that the more the read. How to introduce humour? It's generally about just classic humour. It's juxtaposition and the unexpected, or it's the audience suddenly recognising something they hadn't seen before. Make the butt of humour yourself, and then it's easy. So that's as much as I can give without going into masses of detail. I don't think I can answer your question in the time available. Any other questions? We're on the clock now, quite handy.
Yeah, Chris. Just a basic understanding of storytelling and story structure help start a speech, do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily say it helps start speech, but basic understanding of story structure is fundamental. I didn't really talk about stories, but in terms of your content, when you're thinking about content for a speech, think about stories. Here's a story I can use, here's an anecdote I can use. 100% use stories in your speech. It is the most powerful way to deliver a message. Yes. So use stories, little short stories, or you can make the whole speech one long story, like the changing entire story with one long story just interspersed with some commentary. Yes, so use stories and understand the structure of a story, characters and conflict and chronology. Tracy.
So you visualising the snake, because sometimes I'll forget my transition. So I know it all comes to my traumatising, but the transition, so you're seeing the visual snake, right?
Yeah, early on I am. After a while it would just become words. So what I used to do is knit words together. I'd get the end of a sort of paragraph, like a mental paragraph, and the last word would be, and then I came home. And in my head I'm thinking, home, arrow, home, arrow, home, arrow. I came home. I saw the green arrow at the traffic lights, and that's that's how I knit transitions together in my head. As I say, I don't have a brilliant memory, but just little things like that can help. My final thoughts. I wrote something on the way back from Malaysia many years ago because I learnt a great deal. I won't read the whole thing. But I was really struggling. I was overperforming my speech, and I was getting help from a lovely man named Jock Elliott, who's an Australian ex-Toastmasters champion. And we were in the hotel room, and I was going over the speech again and again, and he was still like, stop. And he said something to me, and he said, along the lines of, Chris, presumably you wrote this speech for a reason. Stop the performance and just show us what this speech means to you. You've written it for a reason, just share the message with us. And that's it. And so that was one of those light bulb moments of, oh, actually, yeah, I did write this for a reason. I can just share that. And suddenly it all became a lot easier. Because nerves and anxiety are really associated with performance. I'm going to memorise a script, I'm going to memorise a set of gestures and movements on stage. That's hard work. But if you have something that matters to you, that you're sharing with people for their benefit, well, that's easy. Then it's just a matter of practice. And that, my friends, is me. So take your speech that you've written, turn it into something wonderful, and I look forward to hearing it next time I'm here.